conceived of as an inherently existent, independent property, needs a substratum. We have seen in the previous two verses in this argument that neither arising or static things can provide this substratum. The only alternative remaining is the ceasing. But these phenomena, passing out of existence, are by definition not inherently existent and so fail as candidates. And again, since all phenomena are ceasing, this means that ceasing as an independent property has no basis. The argument here is an obvious echo of the argument against the inherent existence of motion. So, the conclusion to draw is not that there is no cessation or that there are no ceasing phenomena. That would be crazy. Rather, neither cessation nor any impermanent phenomenon can be identified independently as an entity itself. Their existence is purely relational. Nagarjuna now turns to the cessation of the static. The cessation of what is static is not tenable. Nor is the cessation of something not static tenable. 2 points are being made here. First, if there were intrinsically real entities that could serve as ontological bases for cessation, they would have to have either remained stable or not. If the former, then in virtue of having the nature of stasis, they would be incapable of cessation. If the latter, since they never really existed, there is nothing to cease. But there is also a second point being made that depends upon the conventional reality of cessation. Since cessation is conventionally real and is incompatible both with inherently existent stasis and with there being no stasis at all, both of these alternatives with respect to stasis are eliminated. Cessation and stasis must be understood relatively and not absolutely. This point is reiterated in the following verse. Being static does not cease through being static itself. Nor does being static cease through another instance of being static. This verse also echoes 7, and that discussion of the impossibility of arising being either self-explanatory or always explained by reference to yet another arising. All things, having remained momentarily in existence, change constantly. This, however, cannot be explained by reference to the nature of stasis either reflexively or regressively. When the arising of any entity is not tenable, then the cessation of any entity is not tenable. Since nothing arises inherently, nothing ceases inherently. Since upon careful examination nothing withstands analysis as an inherently existing phenomenon, nothing remains independent of conventional designation to be characterized as arising or ceasing. This is how it goes from the ultimate standpoint. From that standpoint, though achieved by noting the universality of arising and cessation of conventional phenomena, since there are no phenomena, there is no arising and cessation. But by contraposition we get the correlativity and mutual entailment of arising and ceasing at the conventional level. For an existent thing cessation is not tenable. A single thing being an entity and a non-entity is not tenable. This verse and the next reinforce the point about the ultimate non-existence of cessation and, by implication, of arising and stasis. In the preceding, Nagarjuna emphasizes that for an inherently existent entity to cease to exist would be for it to inherently exist and not exist. In the subsequent verse, he points out that it makes no sense for a non-existent thing to cease to be, just as it makes no sense to behead someone a second time. Moreover, for a non-entity, cessation would be untenable. Just as a second beheading cannot be performed. Cessation does not cease by means of itself. Nor does it cease by means of another. Just as arising cannot arise from itself or from another arising. This verse has an exact parallel in 7. Again, Nagarjuna recalls the uncomfortable choice between a trivially begged question and a vicious regress presented originally in the context of the discussion of arising and recalled in the discussion of stasis. The argument applies, mutatis mutandis, to cessation. The conclusion of this trio of arguments is that we cannot conceive of any of the three characteristics of dependent arising as self-grounded. All must be understood dependently and hence as empty. Since arising, ceasing, and abiding are not established, there are no compounded things. If all compounded things are unestablished, how could the uncompounded be established? That is, the arising, abiding, and ceasing are not entities, at all they are mere relations. Since these fundamental attributes of dependently arisen phenomena are empty of inherent existence, what could have inherent existence? Like a dream, like an illusion, like a city of Gandharvas. So have arising, abiding, and ceasing been explained. This chapter thus brings the first principles section of Mulamadhyamakarika to a close, drawing together the threads spun in the earlier chapters to produce a thorough demonstration of the emptiness of the conventional phenomenal world. Having demonstrated the emptiness of conditions and their relations to their effects, change and impermanence, the elements, the aggregates, and characteristics, and their bases in short, of all the fundamental Buddhist categories of analysis and explanation, Nagarjuna has now considered the totality they determined dependent arising itself and the entire dependently arisen phenomenal world, arguing that dependent arising and what is dependently arisen are themselves empty of inherent existence. This is a deep result. It again presages the doctrine of the emptiness of emptiness that is made explicit in chapter 24, and it develops further the theme explored in Chapter 1, namely, that when from the Madhyamaka perspective one asserts that a thing is empty or that it is dependently arisen, one is not contrasting their status with the status of some other things that are inherently existent. Nor is one asserting that they are merely dependent on some more fundamental independent thing. Nor is one asserting that instead of having an independent essence things have as their essence dependence or emptiness, either or both of which exist in some other way. Rather, as far as one analyzes, one finds only dependence, relativity, and emptiness, and their dependence, relativity, and emptiness. But this is not to say either that emptiness, dependent arising, or conventional phenomena are non-existent, that they are hallucinations. Indeed, it is to say the opposite. For the upshot of this critical analysis is that existence itself must be reconceived. What is said to be like a dream, like an illusion, is their existence in the mode in which they are ordinarily perceived/conceived as inherently existent. Inherent existence simply is an incoherent notion. The only sense that existence can be given is a conventional, relative sense. And in demonstrating that phenomena have exactly that kind of existence, and that dependent arising has exactly that kind of existence, we recover the existence of phenomenal reality in the context of emptiness. In the next major section, comprising chapters 8 through 13, Nagarjuna addresses the emptiness of the subject of experience.